travelers and tourists. My name is Mark and I'm the local disaster tour guide. That's right, I'm a storyteller who is encouraging you to take your shot at RPG Superstar 2021. Roll for Combat is hosting a competition where they are asking you to submit monsters for Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and if you win, your monster could be published in next year's Battlezoo Bestiary. There's no joke to this bit in my video. I just genuinely want to encourage you all to get out there and share your ideas with the gaming community. This competition is a lot of fun. Welcome to a journey through the fantastic world of TTRPGs like Pathfinder and Starfinder. Today, we are revisiting my Storytelling in Pathfinder 2e series, and we're going to be taking a look at designing monsters. Recently in this series, we've worked through different aspects of encounter mode play in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, but if there's one element of encounter mode play that we haven't touched on, that is the actual art of creating monsters. So today, in honor of the RPG Superstar competition, I'm going to go over the process I use to design monsters, all with the intent of giving you some pointers on how to design monsters for your gaming table, and possibly for RPG Superstar as well. Now let me say up front that last year I was one of the Platinum Prize winners for RPG Superstar 2020. I had a ton of fun in that competition, and I got to work with Stephen Glicker and some of the other people from Roll for Combat who were part of managing that competition. And I can say from experience that that competition is a ton of fun, and so I really do encourage you to try that out, to participate. I am actually going to be submitting monsters again this year. Although the monster in this video is not going to be one of my submissions, but I do want to say that this video is serving a dual purpose because the process that I used to design my Salt Stalkers last year very much mirrors the process that I use when I design monsters for my own gaming table. The processes are very similar, they're basically one and the same, I just do some extra editing when I formally present it for the competition. So some quick notes about this video. Number one, this video is not sponsored in any way. Roll for Combat didn't ask me to make this video, but they are a fantastic team and I strongly encourage you to check them out. The tool that I am using in this video is, as far as I can tell, identical to the tool that Roll for Combat uses. I will be throwing some links in the video description with this monster design tool and a link to Roll for Combat's page in the RPG Superstar 2021 contest. I strongly encourage you to go and check those out, and you can use the monster design tool that I'll be linking as a way to practice if you're interested in actually participating in that competition. But regardless of why you're designing monsters, whether it is for your table or for the competition, I do think that monster design is one of the most interesting areas in storytelling. This is really one of the areas where, as a game master, you get to put your skills to the test. Creating plot lines and plot threads can be a lot of fun, and watching your players react to those things can be very engaging. And even taking monsters that have been published in other sources like the Bestiary and using those to build interesting encounters, that is a lot of fun. But there is something about the process of designing your own unique monster, creating an antagonist that didn't exist until you put stats to it. It is one of the most fascinating, interesting, and engaging parts of being a game master. And if you've never tried it before, let me encourage you to give this a shot. It is a lot of fun. Now, before we dive into the monster creation process and the monster creation tool, let me give you some pointers that I use for the monsters I will be developing for this competition. And no, I won't be giving any spoilers of what I've got coming. Number one, I strongly encourage you to study the art of monster creation. The Game Mastery Guide for Pathfinder 2nd Edition has an entire section on building monsters. Starts on page 56, runs through page 73, and if you're interested in designing monsters, you definitely want to read over that material or check it out in the archives of Nethys before you dive into the nitty-gritty of trying to build a monster. Paizo has done a good job of giving us a resource, of giving us a tool that can make this process a lot more easy and a lot more successful, so I strongly encourage you to make use of that tool. Then the next thing I want to encourage you is, once you've studied the section on building monsters, I encourage you to spend some time studying, well, the bestiaries and the other monsters that Paizo has created. When I get into the monster that I'm designing for this video, I'll go ahead and tell you that the inspiration for this monster was actually a mix of two different monsters that Paizo has already published that I kind of jammed together and did my own unique spin on. When you take the time to study the things that have come before, it can offer guidance and inspiration and serve as an excellent jumping off point in your own monster designs. The third tip that I want to give you is this: playtest your monsters. The monster that I submitted for RPG Superstar last year, the Salt Stalker, I actually playtested in 2 different Starfinder games and a Pathfinder game before I ever submitted it to RPG Superstar. Of the monsters that I am including in my submissions this year, 2 of them have been playtested at my table, and the third one hasn't been playtested yet, but I already have one player who is very interested in the third monster that I am designing. I won't have a chance to playtest that monster before the submission deadline arrives, so unfortunately I won't have a chance to really get to review that one the way I would want to. But if you have the opportunity, I strongly encourage you, before you submit a monster to a competition, take some time to playtest it at your gaming table, see it in action, see if it works. That process of seeing it in play and getting feedback from the players at your gaming table can be invaluable in helping to make whatever monster you're designing the best that it can be. The playtesting that I did with the Salt Stalker is a big part of why that creature did so well last year. And that brings me to the 4th pointer that I would like to give anyone watching this video, which is edit. It is really tempting to fire off a creature as fast as you can, build it, click submit, and sit back and relax. Honestly, for me, the initial process of just typing everything into the monster building tool takes me about 2.5 hours per creature. But I'll go ahead and say this: once I get that initial creature design done, I don't submit the monster. Rather, I let my players come in and read the monster. I sleep for a couple days and come back and look at the monster myself, and then I compare the monster to other monsters in the bestiary, and I give myself a chance to edit my monster before I actually submit my monster. Taking the time to examine and critique your work is an important part of the design process, and allowing other people to examine and critique your work is also an important part of the process, and it's part of what helps take a good idea and turn it into a great idea. So with all that out of the way, I'm going to show you the design process for a simple monster that I recently used in one of my home Pathfinder games, and it's a monster that I called the Alarm Fowl. So in my current Pathfinder game, my party is in a situation where they are trying to avoid being detected by an army of the undead. I feel like the Pathfinder aficionados probably know where my game is set now. As part of this particular challenge, I really wanted to make that stealth aspect, that potential for discovery, to be a major threat for my players, and so I came up with the idea of undead birds, undead crows, that would circle around this army of undead and attempt to identify targets or alert the army to people that might be moving nearby. And I'll go ahead and tell you that the Alarm Fowl is actually a combination of 2 creatures in my brain. One of them is basically any low-level bird that you can find in a bestiary. A good example might be the eagle from the first bestiary. And I've kind of combined that concept with the Vrock. You know, those demons that when they get together, they can dance together and create these terrible storms of magic. I envisioned in my mind some undead crows that could flock together and that could combine their voices to create really loud alarms that might be used to lure other undead creatures close to whatever it is these birds have spotted. Now, one of the cool things about this design tool, as I've said, I'm pretty sure this is identical to the one that they use in RPG Superstar. Their tool is a little more colorful, but other than that, I feel like it's almost identical. But you will see that there are different boxes that you can click on that will have different traits or rules elements built into it, and you may even notice that there are hints or suggestions for different numbers all throughout these boxes. In other words, this tool is developed in such a way that it comes with suggestions that can really serve as a shortcut in designing your monster. Now, I still encourage you to study first, but setting the right shortcuts in place can really cut down on your design time. Also, check this out. Up here you will see base roadmaps, and you can actually come down here and click on Brute, Magical Striker, Spellcaster Int, Skill Paragon, Complete Nonsense, and they will just drop in some suggestions. You can click on Complete Nonsense, and you'll see that it fills in all kinds of different things for you just from the word go. And then you can even come over here and say, I want a level 6 Complete Nonsense creature. And you have the suggestions you need for that creature immediately. Now, I'm going to come over here and remove the notes. I already know what I'm going for, so I'm not too worried about the roadmaps. But if you're looking for some guidelines as you're developing monsters, they're actually built into this tool, and I think that's really cool. Now, what I know about my alarm fowl is I want them to be level -1 creatures. They are not intended to be a physical threat to my party at all. And from studying the bestiary, there are certain things I can fill in just like that. For example, as undead creatures, I know that they probably are evil, so we're going to put neutral evil alignment, and you'll notice that it's filling in over here as we go. And these are tiny creatures, they're just undead crows, and we're going to go down here and give them the undead type. And all of the necessary traits are just filling in automatically as we punch things in. I don't need to put other traits in here, and they don't speak any languages, but if I needed to, I could fill those in. And I'm going to save the description for the end of this video because there's a few small pointers I want to throw in, but they will make more sense after the creature is done. So we're going to do the description last. But I will say, if you're looking at RPG Superstar or other professional publications, take the description seriously because this can be make or break on a good monster design. Now, there are all kinds of pieces of information we can use here. By the way, there's some different things on how to use this tool down here at the bottom, but I want you to notice they've got a section for ability modifiers, defense, perception. We can open up spells. We can take a look at special abilities. There's just all kinds of stuff. And you can minimize the stuff you don't need. For example, our crows aren't going to use any items, so I don't need that particular section. Now, where do we begin? I want to make alarm fowl. I want to make these creatures for my game. What is the most important thing that you need to fill in on your creature? Now, this is a local disaster tour guide opinion, but I feel very strongly about this. I believe the most important thing on any creature that you create is its weakness. Now hear me out. You want to have interesting abilities and good story hooks. You want to create a situation that is going to be engaging for you as a storyteller and is going to be engaging for your players, where they're going to be fascinated by whatever challenge it is that they're facing. And there's a lot of things that go into that element of engagement, but in all of that effort to engage as a storyteller, as a player, it is very easy to overlook one simple truth, and that is your players, at least hypothetically, are supposed to win. I hope, as a storyteller, you're not dropping encounter after encounter after encounter with the hope that your players are going to fail and fail miserably. As a general rule, you want your players to be able to win whatever challenge it is that they are facing. And that means when I develop a monster, the very first thing that I think about is, what is the path to victory for my players? When I am designing a creature, regardless of what section on here I am trying to fill out, I want to look at this stat block I'm creating, and I want to create a very clear roadmap that if my players follow, and the dice are reasonably cooperative, which is always questionable, my players should achieve victory. Now, will the players figure out the exact roadmap? Probably not. And do I want my players to just steamroll the monster? Of course not. But I do want to have a very clear path to victory, and so that means when I'm designing a monster, I want to make sure that they have some sort of weakness so that my players have reasonable odds of success. A ridiculously overpowered monster might be good for the last boss of a campaign and a few select fights in between. I know it may seem like I am harping on this subject, but generally speaking, picking out the weakness of your creature is a very important first step. So, alarm fowl, warning birds, what is their weakness? And the weakness of the warning birds is they can't take a hit. These are tiny, undead birds. They are frail, they are easy to pop. So, I'm going to come down here. I'm going to go to hit points. I'm going to say low hit points because I know I want them to be weak. And it's giving us a range of 5 to 6 hit points. I'm going to give them the minimum. They have 5 hit points. And I'm even going to put a weakness to positive energy for 2. In other words, my undead crows can't take a hit, and if you hit them with any kind of positive energy, they're probably going to explode very quickly. Now, I can build around these other elements of the alarm fowl, and I can give them strengths and unique abilities, but there's a clear weakness that my players can exploit. Now, as you go through here, there's a lot of different things that you can click, that you can check on. One thing that you will observe if you study the bestiary and the game mastery guide is that they recommend that you don't overuse very high or very extreme statistics just because those are intended to be rarer when it comes to creatures. When it comes to ability modifiers, it's okay if the alarm fowl has a good dexterity. I'll go ahead and apply a high modifier there, but when it comes to strength, constitution, and even intelligence, I don't want the alarm fowl to be particularly threatening. So we'll go ahead and throw those in. Now on the intelligence, it's giving me a -4 intelligence modifier. I don't want it to be that low, so I'm going to go for -3. I want the alarm fowl to be at least reasonably intelligent so that they know when to run away from a fight. Now it is worth noting that my alarm fowl are intended to be good at spotting things, so we'll give them a moderate wisdom. But they don't really have any charisma to speak of. And like that, we have filled in our ability score modifiers for the alarm fowl. Next up, we're going to have our defenses. Now, when it comes to the alarm fowl, looking at their defenses, armor class and reflex are 2 defenses I intend to be reasonably strong for this creature. So we will give them a high reflex and a high armor class. Now, I could just click the hints and plug those numbers in. However, in looking at these hints that this tool has given me, I'm not exactly comfortable. I feel like that +8 to reflex saves, an undead crow should not be more agile than a living bird. If I look at other level -1 birds that Paizo has published, that +8 reflex is way too high. So, let's see, moderate, they're saying +5. That might be a better fit for the creature that I'm taking. So you don't want to just take whatever number they give you, but you want to ask, does this number reflect the creature that I'm trying to build? Now we've already said that alarm fowl are not particularly durable, so we're going to go For a terrible fortitude save, well, I guess I'll be generous. I'll give them a +1 instead of a +0. And I'll give them a low will save as well. And when I look at the low option for will saves, I also feel like that's kind of weak, so I'm going to raise it up just a bit as well. Now you see we have armor class and saves filled in. They have a section where I can come in and I can give some modifiers to saving throws. And I'm going to go ahead and do that for the alarm fowl. It's not strictly necessary for a creature this week, but just to give a sample of how it works, alarm fowl have a +1 bonus on saves versus sonic effects. I'm not going to give the alarm fowl any specific resistances or immunities, but I do want to take a look at perception. We've given them a moderate bonus to wisdom, and the function of the alarm fowl is to spot creatures, so I actually think I'm going to go a little bit higher than this +5 and give them a... Oh, I clicked the wrong thing there. I'm going to give them a +6 instead. They've also got a section here for senses, and if you read up on the undead, you'll know that undead typically come with dark vision, so we're going to go ahead and insert that into this creature as well. Next up we have skills, and when it comes to skills, there are honestly only 2 skills that I care about for my alarm fowl, and that's going to be acrobatics and stealth. These are scout birds. They are there to warn their allies, and so those are the only 2 skills that I really care about these birds having. However, it's worth noting I've already emphasized their perception, so I'm not going to push these skills very far. I'm probably only going to give one of these skills a moderate, and the other one's probably going to be low. And I think I'm actually going to let acrobatics be low because, honestly, alarm fowl, they're undead crows. They've probably lost some of their flight, and we'll just punch in the hint there. But for stealth, I'm actually going to go a little bit higher than their hint and take it up to stealth +5, allowing these birds to be a little bit harder to spot. Next up we come to the offense section, and the first thing we get to do is we get to decide what speed or speeds these creatures will have. And one of my rules is when I am developing a creature, I always want to make sure that they are comparable to or maybe a little bit worse than similar creatures that you might find in the bestiary. So for the alarm fowl, what I did is I programmed in a speed of 5 feet and a fly speed of 50 feet, and that speed is a little bit lower than comparable birds of a similar level in the bestiary. Next up, I want to design the attacks that the alarm fowl is going to use. Click the plus to add one, and you can do type, melee or ranged. You have to name it. So we're going to name this beak because that's a pretty common one for birds. And you'll notice that they give us low, moderate, high, or extreme. Now, it is worth noting that for the alarm fowl, I'm keeping them weak, so I'm probably going to be using these low modifiers. So we're going to go +4 to attack. Now, this is a tiny creature, so we'll go ahead and give the beak the finesse trait. And we'll give it 1d4 piercing damage, which is in line with the suggestions for low bonus and low damage when it comes to attacks for the alarm fowl. Now, so far you may notice that this creature is not particularly strong. Sure, it's got decent AC, it's got a few good things like stealth here and there, but I have deliberately powered the alarm fowl down from comparable creatures in the bestiary, and that's because the next thing I'm going to do is design its special abilities, and I wanted to compensate for the fact that I am giving the alarm fowl some special abilities. Now, this is one of my favorite parts of this tool. You'll notice that you can select categories, so general, offense, or defense. You can select how many actions, none, 1, 2, 3, free action, reaction, or if it takes longer to do, you can give it different traits. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create an offensive action for the alarm fowl. We're going to call this action Spew Worms. Okay, so for spew worms, what I have is the alarm fowl vomits live, undigested worms onto a target. The target must make a fortitude save, DC 13. On a failure, the target is sickened 1. On a critical failure, the target is sickened 2. The alarm fowl must spend more time foraging for worms before it can use this ability again. So basically, I've given my creatures a disgusting attack that they can use to gross out my players and possibly give my players some penalties while they're trying to battle these alarm fowl. So that's the first ability I wanted to give them. Okay, so now we have the more serious ability of the alarm fowl, and this is the one that I was really using to mess with my players, which is Warning Screech. It is a 2-action activity with the sonic trait. The alarm fowl lets out a high-frequency screech dealing 2 sonic damage and requiring a basic fortitude save with a DC of 13 to all creatures within 10 feet. This area of damage lasts until the start of the alarm fowl's next turn. If multiple alarm fowl are using this ability and are all within 10 feet of another alarm fowl using the same ability, multiply the base damage by the number of alarm fowl as their combined calls overwhelm the target. Alarm fowl are immune to the damage from this ability. A creature only suffers damage from this ability once per turn, the first time during a round that they are exposed to that area of intense sound. Additional alarm fowl joining the screech do not deal additional damage immediately, but may increase the damage on future turns. An alarm fowl can sustain this ability for a single action on their turn, and we're going to add for up to a minute. An alarm fowl can activate this ability as a single action if they successfully strike a target with their beak in the same turn. And the most important line of text as far as how I was using these monsters, the noise from this ability can be heard easily at a distance of 15 yards multiplied by the number of alarm fowl if multiple are using this ability. So here we have the primary offensive ability for these creatures. It's a sonic attack, which is relatively rare at low levels. You've got the basic fortitude save in there, and you've got some clarifying text for what happens if multiple alarm fowl are using the same ability at the same time. And you've even got this note that shows the primary threat, which is the alarm fowl potentially notifying other monsters more serious dangers that might come to investigate. This is the core of the monster I've created. This is the main ability I want them to be known for. And this, by the way, is a good tip for monster design. If you've got something about the monster that you really want to emphasize or make interesting, offer some flexibility with how it's used. Warning Screech is normally a 2-action activity, but I've included a rule down here where if they successfully strike with their beak in a round, they can use Warning Screech as a 1-action activity instead. That flexibility helps make it a little more interesting and can make combats more interesting as well. But now we have all of the statistics for the creature, so we're going to go back and we're going to type in a quick description. And I'm not going to go too in-depth here, but I am going to point out some notes that you might want to be aware of. Okay, so now we have the description that I have for the alarm fowl. The alarm fowl appears to be a simple crow on first glance, but close inspection reveals the telltale signs of undead corruption. Alarm fowl do not need to eat, but still enjoy foraging for worms, which they occasionally vomit out as a defensive measure. And I've got to insert another line of text here. Magic clap. Their main weapon, however, is their high-pitched screech, which can damage foes and alert allied creatures from great distances. Alarm fowl are smart enough to serve as very simple scouts for undead armies, and some undead spellcasters have been known to select them for familiars as well. So you'll notice that this description is very simple. It covers what you can already kind of tell from the stats, but I want you to pay attention to that last suggestion because this is really good for competitions like RPG Superstar. Alarm fowl have been known to be selected as familiars as well. Basically what I'm doing with that sentence is I'm kind of pointing out some of the other storytelling options that might be available with these creatures even if I don't use them as straight up monsters for a particular encounter. Basically what I'm saying is, hey, this isn't just a monster that you can use, but it's also a familiar that you might be able to give an evil necromancer or other undead caster inside of the game. The description is a fantastic place to drop hints about alternative ways that your creature can be used in order to make them more engaging for game masters and possibly for players as well. So that's just a quick look at the monster creation process. And I know you've got to be laughing at the word quick because this video has definitely already gone on for quite some time. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video here. But let me go ahead and turn the conversation over to you. What are your thoughts on the monster creation process? Do you have questions about how to approach designing a monster? Or do you have tips that you would give game masters who are looking to create their own unique challenges for their players? Throw your thoughts in the comments section down below. Also, feel free to check out my free Discord page and my Patreon. There's links in the video description. And let me just say one more time before I get out of here, I strongly encourage you take a shot on RPG Superstar. The first several times I competed, I didn't win, but last year I did. And part of the reason I won last year is because of my previous experiences where I had to learn and grow as a storyteller. The team that is running this competition, they are fantastic. They do excellent work, and I think very highly of this group of people. I promise you it's a lot of fun and it's worth your time. Take that shot, share your creativity with the community. There is a lot of fun to be had here. But with all of that in mind, thank you so much for being a part of the conversation and have a wonderful day.